Mountain Time each week to talk about startup. As you're going in a new direction with your work, starting a new career, a new project, a new campaign, or a new business, we hope you'll tune us in. And if you have a friend that is in that process, we hope that you'll encourage them to watch the show if you find it helpful yourself. My name is John Wren. I've been working with startups for a long time. I guess since I was 2 years old. My father moved here from Amarillo, Texas. Mom and dad came here so that Pop could start a new business. And my earliest memories are going with him to the warehouse and being happy when he got home, those kinds of memories. And every night at the dinner table, it was sort of like having a business seminar. His business was really important to him, and I got to share in that business from start. Kind of a foggy memory of the start when I was only 2, but I have memories of that, to the conclusion when we were able to sell it 20 years later for cash, and he got a good price just before the kind of business that he was in headed south. And a lot of people who were in a similar business really lost out big time. But you've got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. And he had made up his mind that he really needed to sell, and that's another story. I'll tell you about that sometime maybe. But I, since 1979, have been working with all kinds of businesses. I've had experience in nearly every industry you can think of as a business analyst for a large consulting firm, doing management service work through local CPA firm, and on my own in my private practice. And I've come to believe that there's a role for the consultant very often, and I have enjoyed the work that I've done as a consultant. I believe I've helped some people, but I've become a believer in the idea of people banding together to, in a way, serve as each other's consultant. That's not exactly right, because it's not people getting together to tell each other what to do, but to share their own experience around topics of interest. And we've got 2 ways of doing that. One is the Idea Cafe Startup Workshop. I do one here in Denver every Friday. So I'll be doing it this afternoon. And it's 90 minutes of sharing startup experience and then brainstorming. It's free and open to everybody. We just ask that you bring your brain for the brainstorming, and you'd be willing to share a bit about your startup experience. And everyone has started something. Started school, you started romances, you've started jobs. It's a common experience, but there's very little written about how the startup process actually works. A lot of, especially for business startup, a lot of what has been written really doesn't reflect how things really have gotten started in this country for the last 230 some years. And it's more the big business corporate approach. I say I'm a recovering MBA because a lot of what I learned in graduate business school, I've had to overcome to be truly helpful to people that are starting something new. And now every college, but there's some 8,500 colleges across the country. I'd venture to say everyone is offering something about entrepreneurship, and it's based on this academic approach to entrepreneurship that is not really how businesses have gotten started in the past. Some say that's changed now, that it's not like it used to be. I've got my doubts about that. That this country was built on the idea of individual freedom, and that people could take their own money and take a chance. And if they made some money, they could do more of it, and it would grow and prosper. And that changed. I think it changed, started changing anyway, as far as startup was concerned, when the first MBA was offered. Harvard University, 1910, came up with the first MBA class and awarded degrees in 1912. And ever since, MBAs have been sought out by large corporations because they've been trained in how to, especially to be middle managers, and maybe some strategy for the top manager if they ever make it there. But you stop and think, how many top managers are there in the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, the really large companies? There's some people say, oh, you're starting your own business, that's very risky. Well, you know what, it's risky to take a job too. And at will employment, and you put in 20 years and they fire you just before retirement. You can't say that doesn't happen. We all know somebody it's happened to. And there's been some reforms, and maybe for the better, but in some ways what we've done is built a secure, it's sort of like we're reservation nation now. O.J. Harvey at the University of Colorado did research on the Native Americans, Indian population on reservations, and how it creates this environment where it's very hard for the person to break free from the sort of ease and comfort of continual support. And we've kind of created a nation that is operating like that. I'm all for safety nets and helping people when they're down and out, individual charity and so forth. But what we have today is, we've in some ways are becoming a nation of slackers, where we just sort of sit back and take it easy. And I put myself in that category. I don't speak to you from some high perch of someone who's made millions, and now I'm back to tell you how to do it. But I am somebody that's listened to those sorts of people, who's worked with businesses. I've seen what works and what doesn't. And I'm here to tell you that what that class of MBAs back in 1910 at Harvard started learning, what's really been passed forward since then with refinements. A consultant is somebody that comes in with new words for kind of those old concepts. And I think there are some that get better maybe at having insights into how large organizations work. I read a lot in that area. But what I'm really interested in is how an idea actually becomes a business. And what I've observed is that is a totally different process from what is taught in graduate business school, even in the entrepreneurship classes. I think it got off track back in 1953 when the Small Business Administration was formed. And Eisenhower was trying to find a way to boost the economy. He had meetings here in Denver. I've had the great luxury of having conversation with an observer at those meetings, and observed from far, but saw enough going on to get a grasp of. They boosted the economy with the Veterans Home Loan Program, and that was probably a good idea. But the problem is, once they got up, a full head of steam, they didn't let it go just at houses, which may or may not have been a good idea. Some people think, there's an economist at the University of Chicago that thinks that this emphasis on home ownership is a huge mistake. It makes our labor force immobile, so that it's too hard for people to pick up and move to where the opportunities are, like my mom and dad did back in 1949. They picked up and moved to Denver. Dad had built a house, just this young guy right out of the Navy. He bought a car, sold it, made a profit, used that profit to build a house, sold the house for the capital that he started the business with here in Colorado. So I'm a big admirer of how he got started. And a lot of people did that, but the home has become something where people develop roots and they dig in, and it's hard to get them to move to where the jobs are. Some economists think that's slowed it down. But for better or for worse, Eisenhower came up with this Veterans Home Loan Program. They had a full head of steam, and they decided, well, let's also help these veterans when they want to start a business. And so they took the thinking of veterans building houses. What do? You draw blueprints, and they borrow money to buy land that secures the loan. And so they took and applied that to business. And what do you need then to start a business? A blueprint for what you're going to do. And it created this really a myth, unfounded, unrealistic, it doesn't work, that you are going to draw plans for your business the same way that you draw blueprints for your house. Now, they didn't say it in so many words, but that was what happened that started him down the wrong path. Eisenhower had been used to having battle plans and contingency plans and plan after plan. He'd gone to West Point. He's oriented that way. So all this made perfect sense to him. This is how you'd start a business. The problem is that's not how businesses have started in this country. You know, my dad sold out his business to a small conglomerate, and he went to the first board meeting. They were all part of the management team for this conglomerate, and they sat down at the big table and were told that they were going to have to develop 5-year plans. And my dad's leaving the meeting with one of the other business owners that had sold. And the other guy says, they want us to write a 5-year plan. Hell, I hate to tell them this, but I don't know what's going to happen next week. So, you know, this just do it has been how businesses have started in this country for 230 years. And a great book came out not long ago, published by Harvard Business Review Press, and it captured this spirit and outlined a process where people could pick this up. And, you know, you would have thought that the Small Business Administration would have seen the value. Was two terrific authors. One was president of Babson College at the time. The other one's a well-known management consultant that's had lots of experience. They wrote this book, Just Start, Harvard Business Review Press, and it bombed. It just did not take off. Now, maybe it was a lack of promotion, but I think it's also a lack of acceptance of the reality that businesses don't start the way that the SBA has said that they should start since 1953. And the problem has become worse with the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City. And Myron Kauffman would roll over in his grave if he knew what his wife had done with his money. He did not operate like the Kauffman Foundation has been advocating. Now, what's the result? The Kauffman Foundation comes along, they kind of pour gasoline on the fire. Entrepreneurships have spread on college campuses. What's been the result? Well, the more we've been talking about startup and using this modern approach, which is what the SBA advocates, it's really the venture capital approach of careful market research, careful, formal, strategic planning, and then you go out and raise money on the basis of that plan. And the problem is you get the money and you're locked into this thing that may or may not be the right way to operate. Now, at some point, getting other people's money is a great thing. But, you know, what if the founder of Facebook, Zuckerman, is that how you say his name? Maybe not. I apologize if that's a mispronunciation. But if you watch the movie about how Facebook started, what if instead of just doing it in that dorm room and one thing leading to another and it takes off, they'd written a plan and gone out and tried to raise money? You know, do you think that Facebook would have ended up being what it was? Now, eventually it went public, but, you know, you grow and you have to formalize operations. At some point, you know, once the man, E.F. Schumacher, has, I think, a good insight into this. He said that business changes. He wrote a book called Small is Beautiful that at one time was popular. You don't hear much about it anymore. Small is Beautiful, Economics as if People Mattered. And he kind of combined his view of the world as an economist for the British Coal Company with his interest in trying to sustain the grassroots. And he looked to the Buddhists for some of his inspiration. And he was Catholic himself. I think that the Buddhist thought through Catholic eyes just permeates the book. I think it's a very helpful book to read. And he thinks that business changes at some point when the owner can't be personally connected to every person. You know, kind of like you all go to the water cooler together and you all know each other. And his number for that is 300. I don't know if that's too high or too low. And it used to be that the bedrock of this country were businesses with, say, 10 to 100 employees. And 10 employees is enough that you start getting some leverage, some economies of scale, so that the owner can get away from the business a little bit. At 100, you're starting to staff with professionals and so forth. So 10 to 100 is a good target for a consulting firm, to define their market by. And as you work with these 10 to 100 employee firms, you see that this person is making an important contribution through his business. He's earning a good living for himself and for the others involved with it. That was one of the criteria of good work that Schumacher set forth, is that everyone is well compensated. So it's not slave labor, and that it's a great opportunity for personal growth. So this is how Schumacher saw the salvation. Was, as technology comes along, you adapt it for this size of an enterprise, from very small to this bit larger organization up to 300, Schumacher thought. And he called it intermediate technology. You take these breakthrough ideas and adapt them so that they benefit the smaller firm also. And I think we're starting to see more and more of that now, so that the personal computer, the cell phone, at one point they were calling it the new economy. That was before the bubble broke back in 2000. There was a lot of talk about the new economy. That's why things are progressing so rapidly. And then the bubble broke, and we've sort of had economic problems since then of various kinds. But even with those problems that I think the average ordinary person feels sharply, even now, the stock market's gone to over 17,000, which is astonishing. Now, why is that? Maybe it is just another bubble, another iteration of the illusion of that 2000 bubble break. But maybe there is this new economy that we're really not wanting to talk about again. Maybe we're afraid that that was sort of bad luck to talk about it, and that's what broke the bubble. But I'm driving along with my cell phone. I think of somebody I need to talk with, and I call them right then. What a different world that is than when I had to get to a telephone, and then make the call. So how much more work is getting done on breaks, commutes, all these kinds of things? I think people are becoming much more productive, and that we're all going to benefit from that. And there's this illusion that there are only so many jobs to go around, and that's a total and absolute lie. And maybe we'll talk about that more next time. But I had a professor at DU that was very clear on that. Professor Foster would, in his classes, and I tried to take them all. I took every class he offered, I think. And he would always say, now, if you think there is unemployment, see me after class and I'll put you to work. It may not be work that you want to do at the wage that you'd like to make. And he built a house with student labor like that. It gave a lot of jobs to students. So this unemployment is illusion, Professor Foster said, and I think he's right. They talk about it to just scare us to death. The newspapers, this price of gasoline going down being an economic disaster, how can that possibly be? As the price of gas goes down, there was more disposable income at Christmas. There is no doubt in my mind that that gave a boost to the economy. But how's that portrayed in the media? As bad news. I had a friend, had lunch with a publisher of a newspaper, and this friend of mine said, we're doing baptisms at our church now in the Platte River. And, do you think that would be a story for you? The newspaper publisher said, well, only if someone drowns. And that's what gets covered in the news, is the bad news. And I think there's a lot of good things that are just not showing up in the media currently, in this new economy idea that this technology is being adapted, and that small business has the opportunity to again start flourishing, but not in the face of this tax-funded enterprise to snuff out the entrepreneurial spirit in America. The Small Business Administration, the Kauffman Foundation are killing small business. And that's part of why I do this. So, well, this has been your political indoctrination of the day. I don't lobby. I don't try to go out and influence anybody other than who I see myself as a teacher. If you've learned something from this, go out and check the facts. If I'm wrong, give me a call. We'll have you on the show here. We're going to have people on the show from time to time to share, but it'll also be me talking with you about some of the things I've learned through the business experience that I've had through the education. I say I'm a recovering MBA because a lot of what I've learned in graduate business school I've had to overcome to be helpful to the person going from zero to the first sale. And you can still benefit, though, from other people's experience and not just from me. That's why these Idea Cafe startup workshops are structured so that people come in and share startup experience, and then they share their ideas focused on specific problems that various ones are having. It's free and open to everybody. I've had one here in Denver for over 20 years now. 5280 Magazine says it's infused Colorado, Denver, with an entrepreneurial spirit. And, I think we've made a bit of a difference. It's small meetings. It's like water dripping on a rock, but I think it has done a certain amount of good. And we're trying to now take that same thing to other parts of the country. And we're looking for people that would like to help start a similar type group with their local chamber or other group to kind of get it off to a running start. Best way to decide if you want to do that or not is to come and see the one that we do here in Denver. It's every 2 o'clock, Panera Bread, 13th and Grant, just a block from the Capitol. You can find it online if you Google John Wren Idea Cafe or call me. I'm always available by telephone. Sometimes I don't get back to you until the next day, but you got a much better chance of talking with me if you call, leave a detailed, complete message, and I'll kind of triage and get back to the urgent ones first. So let me know what's going on with you. It usually is like the next day when I call, but give me a call, 303-861-1447. Did you have a pencil? Were you able to write that down? That number again, 303-861-1447. And we're coming up again to the end of the hour, but we'll be at the Panera Bread this afternoon. That's 13th and Grant Street, right on the corner. And we share startup experience, and we do a brainstorming type technique, and it's free and open to everybody. We just ask that you bring your brain for the brainstorming. Now, we try to be helpful to people that are starting in a new direction with their work, starting a new career, a new project or campaign, or a new business. So come and share with us. We don't give advice. I'm there as a learner, not as an expert. And I learn a lot every time. It's the highlight of my week. I really look forward to it. The other group that I try to help precipitate is a group of people that act as each other's sounding board on more of a permanent basis. And the Idea Cafe, sometimes it's just a one-time shot and people come and get started, and then Friday afternoon's not a great time for them. But we say until you're underway, have that first sale, you've really gotten going, keep coming back. Setting the bar at one time only and you start is maybe setting the bar a little too high. So this year in 2015, one of the changes is we're not going to be saying it's just a one-time startup workshop, but it is limited. Eventually, you go on and you're doing other things. But hopefully you've connected with other people and you decide to start a peer group based on what Ben Franklin did. And we call them Franklin Circles. You can call yours whatever you want to. You can just start your own. If you Google how to start a Franklin Circle, pretty much everything I know about how to start one comes up. But I'm always glad to help people start them. And if you'd like my help, either finding a group that's starting that you could be part of or starting one of your own, give me a call and let's talk. And it's a terrific format. I think it was Ben Franklin's best invention. It's simple but powerful. So That number, 303-861-1447. 303-861-1447. We'll be here next Friday, 10 a.m. And in the meantime, remember, this life is very short. So let's get started.